right, diving right in today. And this one goes out to all of you serving in uniform.
Definitely some really thought-provoking stuff for this deep dive.
We're tackling a side of military theory you might not hear enough about. How plain old physical exertion, just how hard you push troops in warfare, plays a role.
Yeah, it's not all tanks and drones.
Nope. We're cracking open Carl von Clausewitz's On War. Seeing what this Prussian general had to say about pushing limits, leadership when things get rough, even how talking about those tough times, well, it cuts both ways.
It's a balancing act for sure.
Chapter 5, to be exact.
Right into the thick of it.
Now I know what you might be thinking. We're the 21st century, got drones, cyber warfare. Pushing troops to their physical limit, is that even relevant anymore?
It's easy to think we've moved past some of that old school stuff.
But that's where Clausewitz gets really interesting. Because even today, those insights he had about the human side of war, they're shockingly relevant.
They really do hold up, even centuries later. Clausewitz doesn't let you off easy. He goes right for it. He's saying that who you are as a person, how you judge situations, it's directly tied to your physical experiences. Been in the trenches, felt that exhaustion, the hunger, when death is a constant threat.
I can't even imagine.
Clausewitz says those people, they're less likely to make hasty calls. They get it, the real cost of war, in a way someone who hasn't lived it just can't.
It's different when it's not theoretical, like you read about running a marathon versus actually hitting the pavement, feeling the burn.
Exactly.
You get a whole new perspective once you've been through it.
Yeah.
Clausewitz seems to be saying experience matters, especially in the military when it comes to decision-making. And he's drawing a hard line in the sand between that real-world experience and, I think he calls it...
armchair theorizing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was not a fan.
Nope, and you see that idea playing out today. The way the military trains super realistic combat simulations, sleep deprivation, physical challenges, it's not just about building a tougher soldier.
That's mental, too.
Absolutely. Mental resilience, getting them ready for the brutal reality of war before they're ever in a life or death scenario.
Like building that muscle memory, but for making decisions when the pressure's on?
Yeah.
Clausewitz doesn't just describe the hardship, though. He goes deeper into how it changes leadership. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that you can only expect troops to push themselves to the absolute max if there's some serious leadership guiding them. It's a powerful statement on how vital good leadership is in those high-stakes moments.
It's one of those timeless leadership challenges, isn't it? Inspiring people to go beyond what they think they're capable of, especially when they're exhausted, scared. How do you do that? And what's fascinating is seeing how much the answer's changed since Clausewitz's time.
How so?
Back then, it was all about that stoic general on horseback, rallying the troops. Today, it's more nuanced.
Well, that's about barking orders.
It's about empowering soldiers at every level, giving them the tools to assess the situation, make decisions under pressure.
So it's more about adaptability these days.
Absolutely. Initiative. You're running on fumes, but you still got to be able to think clearly, make the best call. Doesn't matter if you're a squad leader in the field, a general planning a whole campaign. Those skills are critical. And that actually leads perfectly into another point Clausewitz makes, the mental and emotional toll of all this exertion. He had a great phrase for it, called it the fetters in the dark, the unseen wounds that can stick with you long after the fighting's over.
He was really tuned in to that psychological impact, even back then. Really makes you think.
It's incredibly relevant, especially today when we talk about things like PTSD, moral injury, the psychological weight that comes with combat.
The unseen wounds of war.
Exactly. Clausewitz may not have had those exact terms.
Different time.
But he understood that the human cost of war, it's about way more than just physical casualties.
It's a powerful reminder that when we talk about supporting our troops, we can't just focus on the physical wounds. The invisible ones matter just as much. Now, switching gears a little bit, Clausewitz also talks about this idea of friction, that inherent chaos and unpredictability in war, you can't plan for everything. And he argues that when you throw in physical and mental fatigue, well, it just throws gasoline on that fire.
Think of it like this. Friction is that gap between what you planned, on paper, nice and neat,
Right, all laid out.
and the absolute mess of actual war. You try to plan for every scenario, every outcome.
Which you can never actually do.
Right, you can't. But then add exhaustion, fear, fog of war, suddenly the simplest objective is 10 times harder.
Oh, for sure. And you hear these stories, battles won or lost on the tiniest detail. A miscommunication, wrong move at the wrong time.
And Clausewitz is basically saying, expect the unexpected, especially when you bring that human element into it.
No matter how advanced things get, we can't forget that, can we?
We'd love to think we can plan around it, that technology will be the great equalizer, but the human element of friction, always going to be there.
So being able to adapt to that friction is crucial.
Absolutely. Understanding it. If you want to be a successful leader, militarily or otherwise, that's essential.
That's a great point. Now, for our final point today, Clausewitz talks about how the way we see these hardships, these struggles, totally depends on if we win or lose. Victory has this way of, well, kind of papers over the sacrifices made along the way.
That's the thing about history, right? It's written by the victors. But yeah, it's a really important point. That whole narrative of victory, it can make us blind to the true cost of war.
Almost romanticizing it.
In a way, it's a good reminder that even when you win, it's so important to take stock of what it took to get there. The sacrifices, the hardship.
And to learn from those hardships.
Yeah.
Learn from the decisions made under pressure, both by the people who made them and those who had to live with the consequences.
Right, because everyone's affected.
It's heavy stuff. Clausewitz really packs a punch in this chapter.
He gets you thinking.
Even centuries later, everything he said about the human side of conflict, it's just relevant. There's no other word for it.
Definitely something to reflect on. As you continue your service, think about how these insights about pushing limits, leadership, that lasting impact of war, how it might change your actions, the way you make decisions.
Now, that is something to think about. Thank you, as always, for that incredible breakdown.
Yeah.
And to everyone listening, thank you for your service. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.